Welcome to another episode of Rockets Talk. I got my man Roosh with me, bro. Big week for the Rockets, man. We've been in the media a lot these past few days, and it feels kind of good. I'm not going to lie, though.
It does, man. First of all, the people spoke, and we listened to them. We heard them. So we have a microphone here. So thank you for
bullying works, guys.
It really does.
We need to bring it back. Now I'm playing. But
yeah. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. If it does, please let us know. You ask, shall receive. Look, man, this is honestly the most excited I've been about this team. I think this is top 5 most excited I've been about the team. Just watching one of the players have that kind of like official nationally televised, and also against the best prospect maybe ever, right? Definitely since LeBron, and has like these career nights, 45, 16, and like 5 steals, 3 assists or something, and then 23 points, 19 rebounds, 14 assists. Like, I'm excited. Kornheiser, Wilbon are talking about him.
Right.
Shaq is talking about him. So I think we have a lot to talk about.
It's a lot, and we're gonna use this Kelly Iko article that he had dropped a few days ago, actually before the Sengun kind of explosion onto the national media and the Rockets being front and center, both playing Wemby, and then which all the attention he brings. Then the next night, Harden's return back to Houston. So before that, I think this was a timely article because Ime kind of touched on everything basically throughout the rebuild, gave us a peek into his mind. And the link for that article is going to be in the description of this podcast or video. It's called Ime Udoka on Seeing Glimpses of Rockets Potential, Jalen Green, Sengun's development, and more. And there is a lot more in there. So what we're going to do, bro, we're going to go through some of the questions Kelly asked and then talk about what we took away from Ime's responses. And, that could take us anywhere based on what the topic is. The first one, I think, appropriately is he brought up, when, and I'm going to read it verbatim, when you first took over, you knew how much work it would take to turn things around. With less than 6 weeks left in your inaugural Rocket season, has the reality of the current situation made the task at hand bigger, or have your expectations always been the same? So I'll go first on this one. Basically, Kelly is bringing up the big picture view of what Ime probably saw when he came in. The famous quote, "I've never missed the playoffs." Now, staring down the barrel of missing the playoffs, I think it is appropriate for him to kind of reflect on that based on his expectations. And to me, what was interesting about one of his responses, one of the things that he said is he said it will take a little bit longer with young guys, whether it's a half season, full season, whatever the case may be. Guys learn, grow, and change at a different pace. I was shocked, bro. Not shocked, but I think what I gathered from this article is something that it really does tell me that he is invested in development from this team. And that kind of answers some of the questions about, people question his lineups. Like you think about the Jalen Green playing thing and benching guys like Jalen, Jabari, Sengun in some cases. I think that at first, some of the discourse around Ime was like, he's this like win at all cost, I got to make the playoffs type of coach. But it's kind of reassuring to me in a way to know that he is measured and with the influence he has on the organization. And we were talking about this off air, about the James Harden, which will come up a little bit later, situation. And when Stone had said, he kind of jokingly said in the press conference when they were doing Ime's introduction that I don't know what the quote, like rolled up their sleeves already and had tough discussions. The only thing they could have talked about at that point was James Harden. And if Ime won that argument, he has a lot of power. And for me, it's reassuring to know that a guy that has that much power also doesn't have that, I got to get it now all at once view. So, that's just what I took away from that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, right? He says that he knows what he's signing up for. And so it's like, okay, cool. That would give you the impression that he came here with the long term in mind and maybe hopefully with like a different mindset than Boston, right? He walked into Boston and inherited a good, talented team. The expectations were really high. And I mean, I think he fulfilled them, right? Took them to the finals in his first year. And so maybe he saw a situation where he was like, look, I want to lay my roots. And I want to, cement like a legacy. I don't want to just be this guy that comes in and has to win and win and win. I want to build something from the ground up. And that seems like what he's been doing with these players. And it's also, it kind of shows you we were talking about last week how it feels like now, 3 years later, we're in the same spot that we were, kind of in some ways 3 years ago. And this season would be the ideal way to tank, right? You're getting a ton of development. You're seeing Alperen Sengun break out. The structure is there. Guys are getting their habits coached up, and they talk about this in this article elsewhere as well. And then you're still in a position where if you wanted to, you could technically, and I don't think they're going to, but you could technically shut Fred down, shut Dylan down, go full youth, probably end up with like 31 wins and have decent lottery odds. Obviously, they don't have their pick this season, so that's out of the question. But regardless, I say that to say it's impressive because I keep telling people this. He inherited a defense that was 29th, and all they added in terms of significant impact value defensive players, it was Dylan Brooks. And Dylan Brooks comes with his own warts, by the way. He's not, he's good at defense, but he's also got some serious flaws. And then Fred VanVleet, who's, I guess, an upgrade over KPJ, but, he's a good team defender, but he's not like, oh, my God, Fred VanVleet going to transform your defense. And his defense has transformed with Jalen Green playing 30-something minutes a night, with Alperen Sengun playing 32 minutes a night, 7th right now, top 10 all season. And that just shows you, like, he talks about what stood out to me in that answer was he talked about being positive. Like, I was surprised at how often he was like, man, you just got to be positive. So it seems like he's got tough love, but at the same time, he's, keeping guys' heads up. He's keeping guys motivated. And we talked about this before. For all of the offensive issues, which they talk about why the offense is so simplistic, by the way, and we'll get into that. But for all of those issues, the biggest sign that this team has bought into him as a coach, to me, is exactly what I just said. He took that roster with those two guys as being main additions, add in Aaron Holiday as like part of that rotation, who's not a good defender, take away Tari Eason for most of the season, by the way, and then they don't even have a backup center all season. So, but they, with that same core group of guys, they jumped 22 spots in defense. Like, that's buy-in, period. So long way of saying that it's cool that it sounds like he came here to build from the ground up, understood that assignment. And to your point, I don't think he would have done that if he didn't see a situation where his voice was of importance and magnitude, which it seems like it is.
Yeah, that's to me, it's very important because we know what's happening this summer. They're going to be making a lot of big decisions about what they need to do. One thing that I've noticed with the national attention that we've gotten, I've heard a lot of different people chime in on the Rockets situation, whether it's Nate Duncan and his co-host Danny LaRoe, the GM whisperer, and you also have Tim Legler and his guy and his podcast. They talk about the Rockets, comparing them to the Orlando Magic. Different media outlets have talked about. You talk about Kornheiser and them. But everybody is saying the same thing, and they have to pick a direction. Yeah. They have to pick a direction, especially with what Alperen Sengun is doing. And to know that he's not like, we're not going to trade the farm for a Mikal Bridges only. If you're thinking about development and you have that future view of these guys, then it does kind of help you feel a little reassured. And I really like that he said that. One thing he did, he talked about in the article when Kelly asked him the biggest reason. You brought up the offensive inconsistency, the offensive issues. Kelly asked, what is it? Is it a lack of practice, poor starts, a new system, or something else? And interestingly to me, he said what a lot of us have been saying is guys are getting accustomed to their roles. Guys got to grow and learn from playing with better players and veterans or different types of players. Whether it's Alp going into his post row, understanding how well he's doing, adjusting how the teams are defending him, or Jalen, who had the ball a lot more. And to me, the Jalen one is very, very interesting to stand on because I've said from at the start of the season, his transition into winning basketball is going to be the longest because he was so immersed in Silas Ball as the main character of that movie. And a lot of the guys that are adjusting better, Sengun, Jabari, they were role players. They were the side characters. Yep. So they didn't really have prominent roles. So essentially, they're just doing, Sengun is having a huger role in this season now, way more, but he wasn't the main focal point. So he's learning something different. But Jalen was the man. He was the guy that ran the most pick and rolls last year on the team over Kevin Porter Jr. And then for him to come into this setting where they're asking him to play off ball, and I don't think Ime is relenting on that because he says that he has to learn to do that, play both on and off ball. I love that. I really do think that one of the issues is going to be that and Jalen's adjustment to that. is with the national media. Once again, everybody sees what we've talked about Jalen Green. People can't have rational conversations within the fan base without devolving to you're a hater, you're not a hater. But it's pretty clear, like, obviously Jalen's not playing great. He's been better as of late. But his adaptation, how he adapts to this team is solely going to be based on whether he can fit within the context of what the team is doing and not what he can do. And if he can't do that, I just don't see the fit long term. But I always tell people this summer for him is going to be the most important. And he needs to be able to answer that question. Can I play in the way that helps us win? And if he can answer that, then, we saw the glimpses in the Suns games. You even saw the game against San Antonio. Even though he didn't shoot well, he played pretty good defense and was kind of all over the court. I like how he's been playing lately. But it's all on him at this point. And I think Udoka is giving him every opportunity to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, to the point of all the national media, I do want to emphasize, man, in this fan base, we talked a lot about over the years, like, who cares what national media says? And now we care, right? Because it's good.
Facts.
So just,
grain of salt, yeah.
Capture that feeling, encapsulate that little feeling and just remember what it feels like. Because it's like, this is why it sucks when it's the other end of the stick and they're like, oh, man, Houston's a clown show. What is going on in Houston? Because it does feel awesome when what they're saying is, oh, Houston has that kid who might be a star. This is a lot of fun. Now it's like, hell yeah, we're back, right? I forgot what this felt like. So that's part one. Part two, about like the guys growing, Jalen Green specifically. So I thought it was really interesting because he's saying it's the first time he's playing with a true point guard. He says true point guard, right? And we had all these point guard debates and discussions and all that, right? But it's true. First time he's playing with a true point guard and he's off the ball. So it's interesting, man, because like he had those 2 good games in Phoenix. If you really look at the last like 10, maybe
still the same. Yeah.
It just really hasn't been that good, man. It's weird with the fit because it's like if he can't learn how to play off the ball next to a real point guard and next to a guy like Sengun, like what is the fit? What you really need in that role is someone who plays defense, maybe 6'6", 6'5", scores 15, 16 points a night on like 12 shots a night, close to 5 threes a game, around 37, 38%, right? Not dynamic, but serviceable. And if you could just kind of get that type of player, because like the problem is he can't shoot, right? And you're seeing it lends to the argument of like, yo, when Jalen's going off, is the team actually winning, right? When the ball's in Jalen's hand and he's going off and he's individually playing well, does that produce the best team basketball? And usually the answer has been no. Somewhere in there, Ime talks about, we got to get him to do more than just the pick and roll, right? They want him to do more, make more reads, and we've kind of seen him be limited because the shots have not fallen 31% from 3 on the season. It just is what it is. And then he's limited to the pick and roll or just kind of straight line driving when he's on offense and attacking. But regardless, he does say it's going to take time, for some of these guys, but they do have the decision coming up with Jalen Green. So you wonder, does Jalen Green fit into Ime's offense? Sometimes he wants, a shooter or someone that just provides space. Space is so valuable. He even talks about, Ime talks about it in this answer. He's like, in the beginning of the season, we were making threes.
Right.
Now we're not, and sometimes it's that simple.
The dude said it's well documented.
Yeah. He's like, I promise, dude, it's not my fault.
So all the people, like when he says we need shooting and we didn't get any shooting, I'm telling you, bro, I have a feeling that like he was not happy with the deadline. I feel it in my bones, man. Yeah, to say it's well documented is wild. Tell about your own team. That's like, it's on paper, bro. We suck at shooting.
Which is funny because what did Stone say in that interview when he was like, Jalen's a good fit on paper?
Yeah.
That press or whatever.
I love that. I love our team, bro. Anyways, now this is one of the more interesting parts of the article where he talks about, Kelly asked him about Boston and, he asked him, in Boston, have you been able to bring over to this team let me start from how much of what you ran in Boston have you been able to bring over to this team? Are there certain elements of the offensive principles you use in Houston, or is it complete brand new? Now, we talked about this briefly where he brings up Tatum and Brown having an inverse as the post-up players that they use to generate open threes on the outside because they're bigger wings and they post up smaller guards. But he said in Houston is different. Obviously, Sengun is that post hub now. And the difference is honestly Sengun is a passer out of there, probably more dynamic than Tatum and Brown. He uses a term that I like, though, about guys being offensive receivers and creators. So there's like a distinction there between a guy that can create shots and a guy that can receive shots. And he's saying basically we're lacking both. Yeah. So we don't have guys that can create except like we point out Sengun in the post. And then, obviously Fred VanVleet can create a somewhat, and Fred is he can receive as with the catch and shoots and things like that. But you look across the roster, there's not a lot of outlets for the main action. And I think when he talks about, adding like what they had Rob Williams, that gives them another outlet, and having that, a different type of look for guards, players that can't shoot, to me, gives an extra dimension to the offense. That's why I think it's important for the Rockets to get a kind of a non-Sengun type of center, not a Brook Lopez, like a typical rim running center, because what that does.
Steven Adams?
Not Steven Adams. Not Steven Adams, which is, we're going to have 3 centers, I promise you. And hopefully the third one isn't Boban. We're going to have 3 centers on this team, because Steven Adams, to me, he's what Boban's really supposed to be. A guy plays 10 or 15.
At one point in time, he was a lob threat. He was Russ's lob threat. But
when before he grew his hair out, basically.
No, I mean, he can do it with long hair, but the issue is he's coming off a knee injury, right?
Yeah,
so he's 30 years old,
multiple injuries. I mean, he's a good. I love Steven Adams. I'm not going to slander him, but I just think that extra dimension offers reception from offense from guys that like the Amen Thompsons of the world. It just gives you a different wrinkle, and I think it is important when you think about what this team needs to build going into the summer. We're talking about, I think more than anything, we do need creators. Like, we have a lot of guys that cannot dribble, but having guys that you can. We saw the games like when Sengun was playing. I saw a clip, bro. On the clips against the Clippers, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George were double teaming Sengun. Mm-hmm. And I said this on the last video I made. The last time I saw that was in the year of 2019 when James Harden was averaging 30 plus.
Yeah.
Y'all remember the same damn game where he hit that step back and fell and was saying, wow, wow, wow. Yep. That was the last time I saw a Rocket get double teamed by 2 of the best wing defenders in the NBA. That's not something you do.
That was December 2019. And
there you go.
Was the one that fouled him, right?
Yep. Coming over after they were trying to trap him at half court. Yep. I'm seeing all these things, and we like the game against the Clippers. I mean, we just lost because guys just stopped hitting their shots. Yeah. That was the main difference. We were generating a lot of things.
Like, they had 3 creators, right? They got Harden, they got Paul George, they got Kawhi. That's why when people talk about Harden versus Fred VanVleet, it's like you could talk about the trade-offs all day. You could pull up Harden's stats all day. He's in a perfect situation. He gets to play third wheel to 2 guys who are still in their primes while he's slowly starting to exit his, right? And it's a perfect situation. Basketball-wise, he handles, he shoots, he creates. Those guys finish. They're on the wings. The Clippers have needed a point guard. Like, it's a perfect match. What he would be asked to do on this team, I think he could do, but it would be too much. And I think, A, he'd get worn out, and B, people forget, bro, he had no tolerance for people that were not hooping, right? He has not been in a situation where he was with people that were not hooping, pretty much ever. He went from Houston with CP and Westbrook to Brooklyn, KD and Kyrie, to Philly with Embiid, and now he's in LA with Paul George and Kawhi. Like, I think he would have run out of patience with Jalen Green having these nights that he's having, Jabari crossing over and losing it out of bounds. Like, he gets fed up quickly. That is, and he did with Chris Paul. That was the year that Chris Paul fell off. All that's a side note, though. What's interesting to me about Ime's answer here is he goes, like you said, with us, a lot of times young guys are struggling to do both in terms of create and receive. And then he says, at times you want to rely on Fred to get us into certain sets, but you also want to get him shots as well. And to me, that tells me he doesn't trust anyone other than Fred, right? Which is probably why he plays 36, 37 minutes a night. So when people take Fred for granted, I try to stick up for Fred because I think he gets a lot of flack. Like, he has his warts. He's not perfect, but man, this thing would crumble offensively without him. And then you also look he says in Boston, he had bigger wings and guys who could probably initiate offense and be the recipient. Those 2 things, here's the important part. The playbook grows exponentially, right? A big complaint that people have is the lack of creativity on offense. And this article kind of tells me that a lot of that's probably intentional. We can get into the pace numbers here in a little bit. But for example, I don't know if you saw this, but against the Clippers, probably 3 or 4 times, both I think Jabari and Amen cut from the baseline straight under the rim, and Sengun hit him, right? That was on purpose. I don't know if it was designed by Ime, like, hey, let's go do it, or if it just clicked in their heads because they talked about it pregame, like, hey, that double's going to come from the weak side. When it does, flash to the rim, out people find you, right? But like you could see like the light turn on. So it was interesting because he talks about how the playbook grows when you have these things that the Rockets don't have. So what does that mean? The playbook's probably not, all that grown. And things are simple because he doesn't trust anyone to handle the rock other than Fred. He doesn't trust anyone to create other than Fred. And now, Alp's creating more. And outside of that, it's like just a bunch of guys trying to finish the play.
Yeah, and just to park on that in the Clippers game real quick, I think that first half was probably some of the best offensive execution I've seen them play all season long. Yep. With intentionality, because as you pointed out, not only were they intentional about cutting, but even setting flare screens, a couple pin downs and things like that to get guys open on the weak side. And some of it looked sloppy at times. It looked like they were trying to do it, but it just looked weird. But you can see how, that first half against, we were destroying them. And to me, that is a picture, just a glimpse of how tough the Rockets team can be with the right pieces around them. And this is to me, they're doing it with smokes and mirrors with the guys that we have and the poor shooting that we have. And, with the poor shooting, you're going to get back to the average at some point. So just to see that and he did point out and to what you were talking about with the pace when Kelly asked him about, what is his philosophy on tempo? Does he like to slow? Because, there's been a lot of complaints about Fred. Like you said, people hate that he doesn't run in transition. And I already knew why we slowed the pace down. We slowed the pace down because last year people think just because you have an athletic team, you just should run. Yeah. But
such a misconception.
It's a huge. I don't know where I was listening to. It was an NBA player. I was listening to a podcast today saying that the best teams in the league are slow down the pace. All the best offense, like the best teams, they don't run. They're pace because they're going to get you. And it was a coach.
Watch out, Frank, because people are going to come because they've done this to me and they'll be like, oh, but go look at the pace numbers and the fast break numbers, the Nuggets, the Bucks, and they'll go through the years.
Nuggets is not a fast. The thing is that people confuse pace and running. Running is not pace.
Right.
This I don't know if it was an article. I'm mad. I'm blanking, but this person equated pace, and this is where I view pace: how fast you get into your actions.
Yes.
Right. How fast? That's pace. Pace is not just fast breaks. Fast breaks is fast breaks. People confuse the Rockets not running in transition as pace. That's not pace, guys. Just because we're not throwing lobs to KJ Martin doesn't mean we're slow. Pace is how long. And for the Rockets, we take so long to get into our actions because one, we can't get an entry pass. There's guys cutting in the wrong. There's so many things that go into that. I've noticed, and he says in the article that coming out of the All-Star break, that this was a focus for them to play faster and getting into he says, but we do want to increase our pace, especially with all these young guys. Men's going to play at a different pace than Fred. Once we solidify certain areas, get those down, get our turnovers and shot selection under control, we want to build the pace. So he is, like you said, building from the ground up. You cannot play fast if you don't know what you're doing. Playing fast is intentional. Playing fast means I know where my cuts are coming from. And that half against the Clippers, bro, when I said they were people complain about Sengun holding the ball too long, the double came, whiz, 3-pointer. And it was just moving. And it's just so many things I watch about our team that is so elementary. And it's hard for people to give surface level analysis of what's going on without actually seeing the real basketball of it for them to really know. But I think the biggest thing I took away is that Ime is a really smart dude. I do agree that Fred can play with a little bit more pace. I love when when him and Sengun get into two-man fast, it kills the defense. You know what I mean? You know who the pace killer on the team right now? Jalen Green. If we keep in the buck.
And that's why it's because he over dribbles, right? And he snakes the pick and roll, and then he pulls it back out. And then it's like, all right, well, now what, right? In order to play fast, you got to have some combination of certain things that are vital in basketball, whether it's skill, skill can come in the form of actually like skill on the ball, like the Suns, right? They could get into what they could get into, the 7 seconds or less Suns, because Steve Nash was a wizard with it. And he was just running options left and right, penetrating. Either he had someone cutting, or if he didn't, he had a cutter, sucking a defender with him. Pause. Bringing a defender with him, and then kicking it out for a three, or he'd pull it back out and get a mismatch, whatever. But they had skilled guys, they had high IQ guys, and they had shooters, right? Do the Rockets have that? The Rockets don't have that. Right. They have that in spades and spurts, but they don't have that at large, right? They don't have a roster of guys who are all thinking like it's just natural. There was one play in the first half where it must have been the second quarter because Jayshawn Tate was in. Alp posted up on the right side, Tate cut in the middle. And you had Alp posted up on the right side, Tate up top, Brooks on the opposite elbow, and then I don't know who was in the corner, but I think someone was.
I think I remember the play.
Right, and Tate cuts down the middle. The guy that's helping on the corner, the corner defender, sags over.
Has to respect it. Yeah,
exactly right. Goes with him. Alp kicks it to Dylan. I think Dylan kicks it to the corner, 3, right? Or Dylan shoots the 3. It's something like that. Maybe there's not a corner guy. I can't remember. But the point is, Tate cut. And it took a defender.
It was a Jabari 3, I think. I think it was a Jabari 3. Yeah.
Okay. And so Tate cut, and the only reason the defenders go with him is because they know, hey, that guy can get it to him, right? And everything else just becomes natural from there. That's when it's good basketball. You don't have to overthink it. You've talked about this before. You don't just cut to cut. You're not just running around like, hey, here I am, right? People think they just think like a video game, like, hey, if I just hit the turbo button and go to a spot, like I'll just get the rock and boom, boom, right? But there has to be a rhythm to it, and there has to be a reason to it. So Tate, like I said, cuts down the middle. The only reason that works is because the defense knows Alp is capable and will deliver that pass. So now subconsciously, and that, by the way, is the big thing about the game of basketball, is you just have to make the defense make a mistake for 1 second, 0.8 seconds. They step the wrong way. Oh shit, they're out of position. Now the ball is skipping. Somebody's wide open. It's like that's all you need, right? Which is why I was really critical of D'Antoni being so predictable. I wish they had some rhythms. At one point, you're just giving an advantage away to the defense, but that's a different conversation. But running through Alp opens that up, right? You can make them like now they're worried because they're like, oh shit, if I don't step, it's a layup. So he just takes one step, ball zips over your head, somebody's open. Hand down, man down, right? And that's what Alperen Sengun makes available for you. But it feels like as a team and under Ime Udoka, they're just now getting into that. My favorite part, possibly of the whole article, is in response to that question. And it really shows you how high IQ of a basketball guy you're dealing with Ime Udoka. So he says, I took a deep dive into all the numbers from last season and the areas we struggled in on both sides of the ball, and I wanted to avoid a lot of those. We were a high turnover team, 29th last year. A lot of those came in transition, playing too fast, or guys going one-on-one. So our biggest thing was executing in the half court, limiting these turnovers, which turned in to these fast break points and being 29th in that area in defensive transition as well. So it's like he understands, hey, my team is limited, so I got to put them in the best position that I can put them in to succeed. And what is that? We play safe. We don't force the issue. We're going to keep the ball in Fred's hands, and we're going to run the safe action. Fred and Alp pick and roll. Everything else will peel off that, and we'll see where it gets us. And then if we can establish that, we'll start to elevate and have more wrinkles. Right? That's how he's thinking about it. So, like I said, from the ground up, and I think that's the right way. I think that maximizes this specific team and roster's ability to win. By the way, without Tari Eason, because when you do the other stuff, you open yourself up to a lot of variance. Ball starts turning over. Guys are just kind of running to run. Structure gets lost. And that's how games get out of hand quickly. That's why these Rockets, for the most part, have always been in a game. And even when they start falling down, they claw back into a game because they're just steady and constant. Nothing crazy, nothing flashy, but he's establishing that strong foundation. And, man, if we can just get some talent, which is the tricky part, you could see how this could really turn into something.
You spit in there, and you think about the style of play is really a playoff style where you value every possession. Yes. That's what we play. Pace always slows down in the playoffs. Everything slows down in the playoffs. The Rockets have been playing that brand of basketball all season long because for our limitations, honestly, even the defensive style we play where, Tim Legler on his podcast was kind of criticizing Ime for not doubling Kawhi. That's kind of been our MO the whole season, leaving guys on an island. Like he trusts his defenders to at least make it tough on these great players. And you're just going to have to beat us in isolation because your initial action, we're going to blow that up. Whether it's you trying to get into a pick and roll, we trapping it. And so I'm seeing the little cat and mouse stuff that he does. Like you said, the talent, when you replace guys with better players, the talent can really make the difference between a team winning 35 games. And like he said in the article, they have about 10 games that they could have won if some stuff didn't, go the wrong. So that's 45 plus wins for that team. Real quick before we go to Sengun, the Jalen question he asked when Kelly asked him about Jalen, he says he's talented. And he has games where he's efficient, other games where he struggled and found himself on the bench. What are those talks? So he's talking about talking with Jalen about where he needs to grow. And I think, what Ime's overall summary was that be aggressive when guys go under, be ready to shoot the ball. When you get to the paint and guys are funneling you into the bigs, know where your outlets are. So that's kicking it out. Your drop-offs, your kickouts. And so that's the biggest thing with him, seeing the whole court, seeing how the defense is guarding him. And that's what we continue to preach, making him a well-rounded offensive player. That's been the biggest learning curves for him, not just looking to score for himself, but make the reads and get into other sets for everybody else. To your point about when he scores, it doesn't really move anything. To me, his scoring is like the icing on the cake right now. If he is giving you a positive game where he's actually scoring with the baseline stuff that you're going to get from Fred, Alp, Dylan, you should win most games because that position is such a big need for us that when it's positive, it's like, yeah, we're a good team. But for me, his scoring is such in a vacuum right now because it's so he's not using, even when he makes tough layups and there's 3-4 guys around him, that should be a 3, right? That should be a kick out for a 3. And if you go ahead,
he's doing it on my big thing is he's doing it in transition. Like, I don't care if he can do it in transition. That's cool that he can. But can you do it in the half court? Can you break a defense down when they're set and defending you? Because to your point, that's that's playoff basketball. B, that's when the greats shine. And I've talked about this before. They have moves and then counters to the counters. Those are the greats, the wing players, the skill players with the rock. And that's what I don't see from him. And that's not even mentioning the 31% from 3. But he shoots 15.5 times per game. That's second on the team to Sengun, who shoots 15.6 shots per game. Can you believe that? 15.6 and Jalen's at 15. We're giving 15.5 shots per night, second most on the team by at least 2, probably a little bit more than 2 shots. And he's got 52.5% TS. So sorry, I think I butted in there, but
no, you're good.
That's the context of what we're dealing with. And to your point, it's like, yeah, when he plays well, icing on the cake. When he doesn't, beyond replaceable. That's how it feels.
Right. And I mean, those, and I think as Ime obviously understands that. He talks about him not just being a one type of player, just being more well-rounded. I think for him, until he can leverage his actual strengths, and I don't think he's identified what his strengths are, until he can leverage at least the driving into the paint. He has a very quick first step. If you can't see the court out of that, it does really put a cap on your offensive ceiling as a player. There was some discourse about in the past few days about team builds and this could lead into the Alperen Sengun section of the article about what type of player should the Rockets build around, right? And I've heard people say Jabari, people said Amen Thompson. Nobody really said Jalen, but other players. Cam Whitmore is going to be the guy you're going to. To me, this is the easiest thing to build around a big man because and Ime alludes to somewhere in the article, what Sengun does takes nothing away from the perimeter players. Because everything he does is something you could benefit. If I'm a guard, I don't care if you brought James Harden, Kevin Durant, you brought Tyrese Halliburton on this team. You pair them up with a dominant post player that garners double and triple teams. They're that much better. So not only does he can play with anybody, he actually enhances the perimeter, the two-man game with anybody else on the court. When you build a team, building around somebody, to me, there's a misconception about that being like the guy that takes the most shots. And I think that's what people keep harping on. Like Sengun needs to be this like 25 shots per game. Maybe there's some nights he will have 25 shots per game because he has a mismatch like Wembanyama. But for our team, to me, the only way you can try to keep at least a majority of the players is if they build around Alperen Sengun. Because if you go the men route, you got to get better shooters than what we got right now. That's not going to work.
Can I just keep it real?
Go ahead.
Building around Amen Thompson is going to be really hard. I know people.
It's the hardest.
It's going to be hard.
It's the hardest. It's the hardest, yeah.
Like the Ben Simmons comparison is cool, but I think people need to realize Ben Simmons is the peak of the Ben Simmons comparison, right? So far as actual player that we've seen. And by the way, Ben Simmons is not LeBron. That's a totally different class of players.
Right.
As far as the Ben Simmons archetype goes, Ben Simmons is your pinnacle of the Ben Simmons archetype. You know what I mean? So at best, he will be Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons scored 16 a night, and he was 6'10", which makes a huge difference, right? And you pointed out on Twitter, his handles were elite, not just like capable, but like elite, right?
Some Magic Johnson stuff. Yeah.
So, and that was 16, 8, and 8, right? And even then, building around him required Joel Embiid, right?
Did they really build around Ben though? I think he was. They supplemented him. Yeah. But I think it was the Embiid build. Yeah.
Right. So correct. But the point is, building around. I just want to. It's an unpopular opinion. People will probably get upset, but I just kind of want to set that expectation because I think Amen is a good player. I think he's one of the most fun perimeter defenders I've seen maybe ever. I love watching him play defense. It's so much fun. On offense, though, I think he's a connecting big. And I didn't want to keep going about Sengun, but I just had to get that in there because Amen is like I think it's so clear cut that Sengun is the guy you got to build around because there is really no other answer that makes any sense. I don't know if you agree with that.
No, I mean, yes, 100%. And I think Amen Thompson is I've used the comp for Aaron Gordon because I see him more as a playmaking wing than actual just a ball. It's really hard. If you're going to build, you can't build around a point guard that can't shoot. That's the hardest type of because you're going to need nothing but shooters, and you need specific type of players. I don't think people really do the mental exercise of thinking about these things that they assume about like the players. You can't build around Sengun, you can't build around Amen Thompson, but Amen Thompson can be an elite player on a championship team, and I think for that level of player. Having a player like Sengun unlocks a lot for his game because a big man that could garner the double team, Amen now has a cutting option. He has the pick and roll option with the same player. He could do inverse pick and rolls with that same. It just opens up the whole world for him. Just like Denver runs inverse pick and rolls with Aaron Gordon and Jokic. So with the Sengun, obviously, we've seen, like you pointed out, 45, 15 and whatever it was, then comes out the next night at home, has a triple double, 20 plus, 15 plus rebounds, has 11 assists,
23, 19, and a career high 14 dimes.
14 dimes.
I mean,
like, and you know what's funny about it? It didn't really look like it was all that, like, when guys have one of those games, it's like they're doing a lot. All of that came within the flow of the game.
Natural.
In a game that wasn't even high scoring, it didn't go to overtime. It was just the flow. That was the most Sabonis type game I've seen him have as far as the offense actually catering to his just the natural things he does on a play-to-play basis. That's why I said that the first half was really impressive to me, what the offense they ran, because that looked like something like a team that's more developed like the Kings would do. Whereas he gets the ball, even though it's different for him, he's not running DHOs, but once the double comes, kick, shoot three, bang, that's an assist. You're going to do, you're coming at me with a trap, a guy's going to cut, bang, that's an assist. He can do that. Like he can average 8 assists, 9 assists a game if we had like a high IQ team, in my opinion, bro.
Yeah, and some shooters, right? Look, those back-to-back games. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, on Amen, the big problem with building around a guard that like can't shoot that bad. And again, when you're going to bring up a comparison, it's got to be someone who literally cannot shoot, not someone that not like Westbrook. Oh, he's a bad shooter. Westbrook can back all the way off of Westbrook. He'll eventually make a few and throughout the course of the season, he'll probably make like 44% or something. But Amen Thompson, you literally don't even have to guard it. What they do, they're just going to go man to man. No one's going to help off the shooters. And like, it's just going to be him driving, doing that little ugly broken hitch flip shot or the little midi that he takes that he doesn't make, and then your offense is subject to that at the outset of every single game. It's really hard to do that. Anyways, on Sengun, those back-to-back games for me was the first time probably since the Harden era that I feel like, okay, I think it's crystal clear what the direction should be. And it's you build around this kid. If you want to trade him and make your like Tyrese Halliburton Sabonis trade, sure, you can also explore that. But for me, I wouldn't do that. I would tap into the homegrown talent that you drafted that is growing before your eyes in a league where the tide is turning and the big man is back. And it's the Euro big man, which is kind of crazy, right? You know what I mean? Jokic, Giannis. Why am I forgetting the other big men? Sabonis.
Sabonis is out there. I mean, you got Embiid, who's from Cameroon. I mean, it's all these international big men that's dominating the NBA right now. Yeah.
So lean into that, right? He's been playing really well this season, and I think he's been by far and away the best player on the roster. But those two games, to me, like that's the coming out party. That's the official Alperen Sengun coming out party. Wembanyama is another one. Chet Holmgren's another one, even though I guess he's American. But to the best prospect ever, Victor Wembanyama owned him on national television and then backdoored that in a back-to-back with those numbers.
A back-to-back, bro. That's what I keep forgetting. That game was on the Clippers game with the 20, whatever you said. That was a back-to-back.
And he played like, people forget. People are like, oh, man, you got to make his free throws. Bro, he played 42 minutes on a back-to-back. That's probably the most he's ever played in his life, literally.
In 2 days, in a 2-game span.
2-day span, right? So I just think, for most of the season, it's been so inconsistent and up and down. I've always been a Sengun guy, but I could see the argument to where it's like, well, maybe we don't build around him. But those two games to me was like, all right, I mean, what are we doing here? We haven't even leaned into this fully. Like that Clippers game was full-blown Shen Hub. We talk Shen Hub. That is exhibit A, right? You lean into that and you actually get some good players and maybe you get Tari back, maybe a couple shooters, maybe a backup center. And I think you have something, something worth building on. So that's how I felt. It was just kind of like, all right, the vision's been up and down, inconsistent, unclear. Those two games gave me like, okay, that's it. Lean into this. Do whatever you got to do to maximize the prospects of this, right? And I won't mention Jalen Green again, but one of the first thoughts I had is I just don't see Jalen Green fitting in to a team built around this. I know they had their two-man game when they were, last season before that, but I think his style just kind of it kills some of the flow because of the over-dribbling, unless he's making his shot. And if he shoots his shot quicker, right? But we've kind of seen enough to know, like, I don't know if he's going to make that shot at that rate. So, but anyways, real direction.
This summer is for Jalen. Like, I'm going to keep saying it. Like, if he's going to have a miraculous, like, coming out of as far as being just a player that gets it, it has to be this summer. But to the shame, I'm going to let Ime tell y'all what he thinks about Sengun. So, Kelly asked, you mentioned Alperen Sengun. He's unlike most big men you've coached. What has the process of working with him been like? Ime says it's been great. I mean, the scoring piece, I've had a ton of big scores in the past. I've worked with Joel Embiid, obviously Tim Duncan, LaMarcus Aldridge. I've had a lot of low post scorers that I've coached and played throughout my career, but the overall game and where you can place him on the court, the only other guy that kind of matches it is Joel. But even with that, Joel is not really the passer that Alperen is. I want y'all to really understand what Ime is saying here, bro. I've wondered, honestly, bro, what his perception of Sengun was because of some of the discourse that comes out of the Rockets about Sengun. To me, this is crystal clear. He gets it, right? I'm going to keep going. He says, or he wasn't, let me start. But even with that, Joel is not really the passer that Alperen is, or he wasn't when I had him. He's gotten better in that regard. But yeah, he's very unique, and it's a luxury to have a guy like him you can move all over the court, do a lot of things with. Once his shooting improves, it will open up the court for him and the team. The thing is understanding and us adjusting how teams are going after him. He had a hot start, not a lot of post scores in the league, so teams have been focused on taking him out and making us improve it from making us prove it from three. So the lack of shooting, once again, is pointed out there. That has been the Rockets' Achilles heel this whole season, where I said we need a shooting. And people are like, oh, well, you can't build it. No, bro. The NBA is smart. They see you got this dominant dude. He's doing this. We're going to stop him from doing this. You can't punish us. Until you punish us, we're going to keep stopping you from doing what you want to do. And he said that he had a lot to start, not a lot of post scores. He said it's really about how he adjusts and is putting him in better positions, but also growing and adapting to the success he had this year so far. So with the Sengun thing, to me, the games, watching that, Tillman Fertitta was at, I think, the Wemby game, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
I think he was at the Wemby game. There was a picture, I sent it to you, of him hugging. Tillman looked like he's probably hugging money. That's how the smile that was on his face. And I joked with you about the Rockets. I don't know why it's taking them this long to lean into this. On a marketing standpoint, this is a layup. You have Turkey, who is the 11th most populated country in Europe or in the something like that. They have a large fan base. We've seen this movie with Yao Ming. Obviously, there's way more people in China, but still, marketing wise, the NBA has done a lot to prompt a young Euro big. They understand the impact of international players on growing the game as a brand. The Rockets are hustling backwards, bro.
And you know
this is a layup.
You know what's interesting about that is when we had Yao and then later Jeremy Lin and Joe Chi, people really understood leaning into that, right? And there are Chinese fans that maybe not anymore because of his political controversy, but up until that point, even though Yao Ming was no longer on the Rockets, there were still very loyal Chinese Rockets fans because they tapped into that. And to your point, it's a layup, bro. You could build these inroads with the Turkish community if you do it right, And you saw you had that graphic that you shared where it's all this. It basically accounted for numerically all of the contribution from Turkey, right? Viewership and increase in streams or league pass viewers or whatever. And it's dude, why aren't the Rockets generating that? Right? It's interesting. So
it's a question, and once again, I'm going to reference the tweet Jackson put out about somebody from the Rockets front office saying that they're not really, whoever that person is, at this point, they're irrelevant. As that opinion hopefully has changed. I think there's a point where he's going to transcend whatever the perceptions of front office executives is. Because when your ownership can sit on the court and feel the energy, bro, I was looking at the crowd. I remember as I was young when Hakeem played in his prime. I was really young. My stepdad used to watch religiously. I'm Nigerian. Hakeem is Nigerian. In our community, he's the GOAT. That's the guy. In Houston, if you're a Nigerian in Houston, all the African dads in Houston, they worship Hakeem Olajuwon. He could do no wrong. So I grew up watching this. I had to sit down and watch this dude. The reactions in the crowd, I seen a dude do one of these, bro, shot at a play shank. I was like, yeah, man, it's over. You know the dude I'm talking about. If you watch the game, there's you look at the faces. There's people that they're shocked and awed at what they're watching from their home team because of this dude. If I'm an owner and I'm looking, bro, what are we talking about?
Yeah,
this is a layup. It's a layup, man. It's easy. It's to me, there's no going back. The genie's out the bottle. At this point, is this summer, I think. It's weird to say 2 games can change a direction of a team, but I honestly think that these games may have forced something within the Rockets organization.
Doesn't it feel like that? It
feels like it. It feels like
it. Part of me is I'm overreacting. I'm in the moment, and then part of me is well, yeah, but I mean, it feels like that felt special, and that's what I was trying to talk. That's what I was trying to capture earlier. Is man, he dropped 45 on Wemby's head, and then backdoored it with. Historic. It was a historic stat line. No big has ever done that, I think, because of the 2 steals, 23, 19, 14, and 2 steals. I don't know. It just felt it felt like when James Harden had those first 2 games as a Rocket.
The Detroit game where he dropped, what did he drop, 44 in this? Yeah, he was like, okay, this guy's
37 and 45 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
It was Detroit and maybe Atlanta, but I don't know. I can't remember. Because I remember at the time, I didn't get why we went all in on James Harden.
Same.
So I was super wrong about that, and I'm happy to be wrong about that. But when I saw those 2 games, I was like, oh, shit. Whoa, hold up then. And with Sengun, I feel like that it was just like, dude. And to your point, I've been big on Sengun the entire time. I didn't know who he was when the Rockets drafted him. But once I saw that first Summer League game, I was like, yes, I'm in. And the reason – and he's got his downfalls. He's got his warts. So, like, he's not perfect. And you know, you got to build around him correctly to make it work, right? If you don't build – he's not one of those players that – he's not like Harden in 2014.
LeBron and stuff.
Yeah. LeBron and Luka, you know, where Harden was dragging like Kostas Papanikolaou and Joey Dorsey to the Western Conference Finals, you know? So he's not like that. But the main thing about him that I like, dude, is he's just fun. And to your point of like the dude in the crowd, like, oh, he's just fun, right? He had that bounce pass against the Spurs where Fred hit in transition, that no look to
Cam.
You know, like those plays, you know?
Bro, that play got, man, and then even further back, to me, you don't get to that point where 2 games matter without laying the foundation over the years. I'm not even going to say it was just those 2 games. I think that was the peak of a lot of like, this dude is balling. Like, you think about the play-in game against the Pelicans. Like, there's so many landmark games he's had this year where you're like, damn, this dude can play. I've like since last year, you hear NBA players after NBA players after NBA players saying, man, play through him. He's good. I don't know, like he's cold. Everybody. And Paul George, KD, Luka, Jokic, everybody keeps saying it. People ignore that. I watched the opposing coaches' post-game conferences to a man, damn near every single game. Yeah, we know game plan was try to stop him. It's a tough cover. We had to. Ta Lou said the same thing after the Clippers game. Our plan was to stop Sengun. He's a tough cover. I think we did a good job, blah, 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 blah. These are champions, bro.
Yeah.
Ta Lou is a champion. He coached, so I'm saying all that to say, if the Rockets can't see this, bro, then I don't know. Like, to me, then we have no hope as a franchise. This is easy. And even at worst, the complaint about like, you're a 2nd round exit if you don't have who cares, bro? That we're broke right now. It's like 2 broke people arguing about what type of Bentley they're gonna pick when they get. Bro, you don't have a house. Let's get in the house. Let's get the money. You feel me? Then if we get to the point where we arguing about the Bentleys we want to buy, then we could, you know, maybe we will. But we are homeless.
That's you heard it
like, what are we talking about? 2nd round exit. Yeah, go ahead.
That's where people get it twisted, bro. Because it's like, look. I think some people got warped by the tank because they're just like, we'll just prospect. There's a new prospect. You know, we'll trade Sengun and build and draft the prospect. And it's like, bro, if you're lucky, you can do that maybe a couple times. But you got to be really good and you got to get a lot of luck. When you got the bird in hand, don't take that for granted, right? And I would like to remind folks, we were being sold KPJ and Jalen Green.
Facts.
Sengun was sitting right there, right? And we had to watch Christian Wood get all the reps. And we had to watch Daniel Tice start. And, like, I won't go down the list. But, man, don't forget that. Because the Rockets got really lucky that a few things happened and the Rock bounced into Sengun. He was thrust into the spotlight. And, like, they needed him, right? Don't forget Brook Lopez. They tried to sign Brook Lopez. And for everyone that says that they would have shared the court, maybe. I don't know. But if they had signed Brook Lopez, Sengun would have been the backup center. Because the 2 guys they signed as the backup centers, Jock Landale and Jeff Green, were signed with the money that went to Brook Lopez, right? So the intention of how they structured it was, we're going to spend $25 million Brook Lopez. Sengun's the backup. Unless Brook Lopez would magically accept the backup role for $25 million. Maybe he would. I don't think so. And then your 3rd string center was Boban, right? So don't get that twisted. But I think he's given them no choice. You have to, like, Sengun's your best player. I think he's made the decision of like, hey, what's the vision for this team? Very easy. Now just build around him. Just use the assets you have, the capital you have, the draft capital that you have. Figure out which one of these prospects you might be willing to let go if you have to. Make a couple trades and bring in some big boys. Because I think next year, after the foundation they're laying this year, if Stone in the front office can actually make the right couple moves, then there's hope in Houston. But that is where the burden lies. They got to make the right moves. Because if they don't, extensions start to be due. And then I don't know how those things start to look, right? But he's given them a path. So I think it's crystal clear.
Facts, and we're gonna close with this. And to your point about the Brook Lopez situation, Jake Fisher dropped the article today where he interviewed Alperen Sengun. To me, once again, I saw what he said, how he talked about. I'm talking about Sengun on the Paul George podcast. Whatever the kids call aura, he got it. Like his English doesn't do him justice as far as his confidence and like that bravado. He got that. Like bro. Not even like the dude. He got like swag. He's confident. If he was a black, like if he was black, like he would be like Ant. Like the dude talks. He talks that talk, bro. This dude said this the quote that I was like, yeah. He says about Brook Lopez, if he was coming, Sengun told Yahoo Sports, I was fighting for my spot.
Man, I love that.
I was like, that's a bar. Yeah. That's a bar. We can end on that, bro. We can end on that. So the Rockets got, I think we had like Portland and a stretch of games. I think it's Portland. It's like Friday. We got a game Friday and Sunday. I'm not sure, but it gets a little
Friday. Kings on Sunday. Spurs on Tuesday.
Wizards
on Thursday. So if they get their shit together, they could rattle 4 off in a row if they really want to be serious.
What's your hope on the play-in? I'm kind of hopeless. I'm out. I'm hoping. It's over. Okay, I'm out.
Back. I think there's 6 games back with 20 games to go. I think it ain't gonna happen unless the Lakers, collapse. You know what I mean? Which I don't think that's gonna happen. So
yeah, so that's okay. You still get games like we just saw, right, where you get to watch young guys. So for me, keep balling. I want all our players to have these flash moments. So to me, that's important. I think that's why you don't just shut down the season. Let them be out there, get some good games under and take that momentum into the off season. But appreciate you, bro. This is episode 4 of Rockets Talk. We're going to be back with y'all next week. Keep rocking with the Chop Shop, and we're going to keep dropping that fire.